We are closely following what's happening this morning with Air Canada. The Canada Industrial Relations Board says the ongoing strike by Air Canada's 10,000 flight attendants is illegal. This comes as flight attendants with the airline are expected to be back on the picket line today. Their union defied the back-to-work order from the federal government yesterday. Air Canada says it plans to resume flights this evening. It is unclear if that will happen. John Graddick is a former Air Canada executive and teaches aviation management at McGill University. He spoke this morning with the CBC's David Common.
I think I'm going to see the government back down on this CIRB because it really is inflammatory to the unions. They've been using this Article 107 referral to the Labor Code, Article 107 of the Labor Code to refer to the CIRB for once too many. This is one time where there's been pretty easy sailing for the government to do this and to wipe management's responsibility for negotiating off the table. I think this time around they pushed it just once too many, and I think that they're going to be called upon to kind of back off. And really, I would put both management and labor in a conference room someplace and just lock the door, and you don't come out until you have an agreement. That's the only way this is going to get settled. And if you do that, the flight attendants are back to work. And that's what they want. They want to negotiate. They don't want to have an imposition. And so as soon as you announce that, we're back to work.
That's John Graddick, an aviation management specialist. Meanwhile, thousands of passengers still stranded all over the world. For more on what Air Canada customers need to know, we're joined this morning by Gábor Lukács. He's the president of Air Passenger Rights, a nonprofit group for travelers, and he's with us this morning. Gábor, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. What do you make of the situation this morning between Air Canada and its union and now the Canada Industrial Relations Board?
It was lovely to listen to John Graddick and his common sense. I very much agree with him. The government's attempt to force the workers back to work is highly unlikely to be legal. I have significant constitutional concerns myself, and it is just not the way to deal with the situation. The government should be forcing Air Canada to just comply with the law in terms of respecting passengers' rights. And had that been happening, perhaps Air Canada would have already settled with the flight attendants because that economic cost of the strike would have been much bigger. Air Canada has been attempting to shirk its basic obligations to passengers in this situation by illegitimate means. Under the Air Passenger Protection Regulations, Air Canada has an obligation to rebook passengers not just on its own flights, but also on competitor airlines. The law says the next available flight on any carrier, and that literally means any carrier. What we have seen is that passengers received emails from Air Canada falsely and fraudulently telling them that Air Canada is unable to rebook them. And many of these passengers then found that there were tickets there were seats available on flights of other airlines. Just Air Canada refused or failed to rebook them on those flights. We see passengers currently stranded in Europe and outside Canada because Air Canada is refusing to obey the law with respect to rebooking passengers. And that is the government's fault. The government has the tools and should be using the tools to uphold the law and force Air Canada to actually rebook passengers on competitor airlines if it is business class. That's what the law says. Now it's time that the government uphold the law.
Do you have a sense as to the scale of that problem right now? As you say, if Air Canada is not booking people on available flights, do we know whether that's here and there, or is that across the board? And how do we know that?
It's a large-scale problem. We see about this in our Facebook group, a Facebook group of 250,000 members. And this is a recurrent report that we receive from passengers. Some passengers reported actually that they walked up to Air Canada agents, and I believe it was in the US, and asked them to be rebooked on WestJet, was it, or Air Transit? I forget which of them. And they said, no, we are not doing it. We were told not to do it, even though the law says they are required to do it. Another item of interest is just this morning I received news that a class action lawsuit has been filed against Air Canada precisely of this type of dishonest conduct.
Okay, now that's all well and good, but in the meantime, people are wondering what to do. So if a customer has a ticket and they need to get from A to B and they're looking at this kind of chaos this morning, what should they be doing?
Most important thing is don't follow what Air Canada is telling you, but follow the law. If your flight has not been canceled yet, just wait. Once your flight is canceled, do not take a refund. I repeat, do not accept a refund under any circumstance. Give Air Canada maybe 3 hours as a chance to rebook you on other airlines. If you don't receive a rebooking, or if they send you that famous fraudulent email telling you that there are no flights available at all, then do your own research, find out what flights are available on other airlines, buy that ticket, keep the receipt, and then make Air Canada pay for it. Send them the bill, send them the receipt, give them 30 days to pay up. And if they don't pay, take them to small claims court, or in British Columbia, it would be the BC Civil Resolutions Tribunal.
We've heard about the backlog of these kinds of disputes already, even before this.
No, actually, you're misstating the facts. I'm talking about the British Columbia Civil Resolutions Tribunal.
Right, but
they are not backlog.
Okay, sure.
I'm recommending people to avoid the federal government, the Canadian Transportation Agency, because they have a backlog and they are cozy with the airlines. You may recall in 2021, a parliamentary committee unanimously raised concerns of corruption, framed as regulatory capture of the Canadian Transportation Agency. So they are not going to be a body which is going to help passengers. They are the body to avoid. But the British Columbia Civil Resolution Tribunal is an impartial body. I don't always agree with their decisions, but what I can tell you is that they are doing their job professionally and in a timely manner.
Right. So my question was, how long do you think these things might take to work their way through whichever system people decide to pursue?
Well, if you go to the federal government, it's going to take you 2-3 years, and I don't recommend that. If you go to the BC Civil Resolutions Tribunal, it can be a couple of months, and Air Canada will have to pay those things. It's quite obvious that what they have done was wrong, and it's just a matter of time. But I would say to the tune of a couple of months. You still have to advance the money, which is unfortunately how everything of this nature works. But ultimately, the airline will have to pay.
The Prime Minister has just released a statement calling this situation unfortunate. He kind of echoes what John Graddock said, which is get into a room and talk. How likely do you think that is in the next little while?
It's quite hypocritical by the government to make those type of statements, given that it was the government that came down seemingly on the airline side and trying to force on them binding arbitration. What the government should do and should have done already is force Air Canada to pay for all the damage they're causing to passengers in a short time, because that would create a meaningful financial incentive for the airline, for Air Canada, to actually settle. Right now, they don't have enough financial incentive yet to settle with the flight attendants.
Gábor, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Gábor Lukács, the president of Air Passenger Rights, is a non-profit advocacy group for travelers. We would love to hear your experience if you're stuck in the middle of all this morning. You can send us an email as you're sitting around cooling your jets in the waiting lounge at earlyed@cbc.ca. You can give us a call, 604-662-6690.